live and hope you are too. And we're going to have a great show today with a visitor, attorney Maureen McLeod, here in the city of East Point locally. But we want you to know that you can see us on Smart TV, Roku, Cable Channel, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can also log in to www.wcegtalkradio.com. And you can like us on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and connect with us on LinkedIn, fan base, Blue Skies, and Threads. We hope you're going to enjoy our show today, which is going to be very informative, and it is going to help residents to know they have the power. Now we have with us attorney McLeod, who has represented me on 3 occasions in the city of East Point with 3 wins and no losses. So she is well acquainted with how we do and don't do business in East Point and why there is a need to have legal advice as I am trying to get you, the residents in East Point, up to the point where you will go to court and file a writ of mandamus. You know, I believe in information. I believe in knowledge because knowledge is power. And so I ask the most knowledgeable person and the most down to earth person who can explain to you what I cannot as well as she can. And that is a writ of mandamus. Now, Attorney McLeod, would you please explain to our audience out there just what a writ of mandamus is and how you go about filing it?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Pittman, for having me. It is always a pleasure to interact with you. And let me just say how much I admire your activism over the years. I know you don't stand for any nonsense when you see public officials not doing what they're supposed to do. You're always there looking out for the people and for the rights of the people. And we need more people like you. Let me just say that, because that is how I strongly feel about you and what you have been doing over the years.
Well,
But
thank you,
for
Attorney McLeod. I must give this disclaimer that says the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guests and not WCEG Network. So what you hear, it belongs strictly today to the two of us. I take responsibility for what I say and do, and of course, so does Attorney McLeod. You may continue,
absolutely
please.
nothing to do with the station, just us expressing our views and what we think about the law. And I am just here to talk about a writ of mandamus. For a lot of people don't really understand what that writ is, but it is one of the very, very old writs. It comes to us from English common law. It's been around since the 13th century, actually, and it was developed on what they call the King's Bench, which were some of the first judicial courts in England that were established, to make law, to adjudicate cases, and so on. And what is important and interesting about a writ of mandamus, it is a process that you use to compel governmental entities to do essentially their jobs, to do what they are supposed to do, and not to deviate from their duties. Sometimes there are people in office who will just not adhere to what the codes of conduct or what the rules and regulations of that particular governmental agency says that they are to do. And when a citizen feels like, this particular governmental entity is not operating according to its own rules and regulations and is not doing what it is here to do, that citizen can actually go into court, can petition the Superior Court to issue a writ of mandamus ordering the governmental entity and, of course, the actual people who are behind or officers of this particular governmental entity to do their job. That is a writ of mandamus in a nutshell.
All right. Now, Attorney McLeod, what happens if there is another means of correcting errant, misguided elected officials from following the law and doing what they're supposed to do? Would that come under a writ, a mandamus?
Usually not, because a writ of mandamus usually applies when the person has no other remedy to get the particular public entity to act. So if there's another remedy, say you can just go ahead and regularly sue them and get a money judgment or something like that, then a writ of mandamus would not be issued. A writ of mandamus is issued when the party, the petitioning party, has no other remedy at all.
Okay, and that is very noteworthy because I have been asked by residents, well, why not just go to court and charge them for taking money or the other things? And I have told them no, because there's a remedy for that. Our writ that we want to do in the city is to compel, as you stated, the elected officials to do their job as described by law, their duties and responsibilities. And when they fail to follow the laws that they help create themselves, then they have to either change, correct them, or we will end up going to court asking for help and assistance. Now, when we go to court, where would we file if you want to do a writ?
Superior Court. The Superior Court is the court that handles writs of mandamus. A Superior Court has jurisdiction which is somewhat different than a state court jurisdiction, because writs of mandamus and most other writs, they come under the law of equity, the Old English law of equity, and only the superior courts have equitable jurisdiction. So if you are going to petition for a writ of mandamus, you have to go to the superior court.
All right, then we are going to have an attorney because only a fool represent himself or herself, and I'm no fool. I know
You're
what I know.
absolutely right about that, Miss
I
Pittman.
know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And I know we
I,
need
I would
guidance on that.
advise anyone not to represent themselves in court, because sometimes you think you know, or you Google or whatever it is, but the law can be quite complex. And that is why I would advise anyone not to represent themselves. I'm an attorney myself, and on the few occasions when I've had anything legal that I need to do, I hire another attorney to handle it, because it's just not a good idea to represent yourself.
Thank you very much. Now I have another question. What happens in court with the people, the residents who would file it and their attorney presented? What kind of ruling could we expect from the judge? Favorable, unfavorable, and how do you go about with a favorable ruling, having it enforced here in the city?
I would say, you mean when you actually have gotten your favorable ruling, or how do you try to ensure that you get a favorable ruling, correct? Well, let me go to the first part first,
Okay.
making sure that you get the kind of ruling you want. When you are petitioning a court for a writ of mandamus, you have to present evidence like in any other legal matter. You have to show to the judge that these are the particular duties that this entity is supposed to perform. These are its rules, these are its codes. This is how it is supposed to operate. But we can show you here that it is not operating according to these rules. That would be evidence that would lead the judge to issue this writ of mandamus. You'd have to say, here's what they're doing. And this does not comply with their own rules and regulations and their own codes. We don't have any other remedy because this is not an issue that is resolved by giving us money. This issue can only be resolved by getting them to do what they are supposed to do. And once you can show that to the judge, then more than likely your writ of mandamus will be issued.
And what form would that take? I
Well,
mean, what? I'm
it
sorry.
would be a directive, a written directive to the governmental agency. So of course it's officers to do what they're supposed to do. It will say to them, you have to do this. This is what you have to do.
Could there possibly be sanctions or time
Absolutely.
limit?
Absolutely. If the person to whom the writ is directed chooses not to comply with the writ, there are several sanctions available. One of them is, of course, money sanctions. That's always an option for courts. And then, of course, the agency could be found in contempt. And of course, as we know, agencies act by the people behind them. So the officers of the agency could actually be personally held in contempt themselves. And of course, there is civil contempt and there is criminal contempt. When you are held in criminal contempt, you could actually be put in jail. So that is a potential sanction of failing to comply with the court's orders.
Now, I like that because too often elected officials will say, well, you're going to jail. Well, this would be one time the resident will say, you are going to jail. And
That is
hopefully you
right.
won't do what you won't go to jail because you're going to be smart enough to do the job that you asked the voters to give you when they went to the polls and voted. And residents need to understand they are the ones who have the power. They had the power of the vote to put elected officials into office. They have the power of the courts. They have the power of getting together, protesting, and lobbying the council members to be held accountable for their actions. But when you have a council that is not holding each other and themselves accountable, you have a rogue council. They are misinformed, misdirected, and they can't always put it on bad judgment. Bad judgment is not a violation of our policies and laws. Unfortunately, that's something the voters will have to take into consideration at the next election or take another route. However, when it is written in your laws, the conduct and the process by which certain situations are to be resolved, you can't take shortcuts or leave some out and go and do and come back and beg for forgiveness. No, we're not God. You go to God for forgiveness. You can't. We don't. You don't give residents forgiveness when they're late paying their utility bill. You stand on the law. You stand on the law when it
True.
comes to paying property taxes. Well, the residents are now saying we are standing on the law. We want accountability and transparencies. And there are laws on the books that you have to follow so that we know when this action that you are taking, we have had an opportunity to look at it, to have questions about it, and hopefully have gotten answers that will help us and you to be more informed about what it is that you're doing. Now, here in East Point, unfortunately, we have a mayor and council that for the last 10 years, not all the council members have been up there 10 years, some have. Um, the council, mayor and council, when I was the mayor, we passed and created an ordinance for a stormwater utility. In that stormwater utility, there is a section called administrative appeal. because as a council, we said we would not allow any employee to be the sole person to determine whether or not work should be done on a resident's property due to stormwater runoff. And that if there were a discrepancy, it would have to go to an administrative board made up of 9 residents, each one appointed by the mayor and 8 council members. This board would function similarly to what a civil board does. 10 years later, over $21 million has been collected and no administrative board exists. And we have an 80-year-old veteran here in East Point whose front yard has a sinkhole in it, and he lives less than 500 feet, less than 200 feet from a creek. They want him to pay $3,000 of the $9,000 they said it would take to fix the sinkhole. He doesn't have it. And when he contacted me, I said, you disagree with it? We'll appeal to the Administrative Appeals Board. There is no Administrative Appeals Board. And according to the document, the ordinance that created the stormwater utility, you can only go to court after you have used and exhausted all means prior to filing the lawsuit, meaning you have disagreed, filed an appeal with the Administrative Appeals Board. There is no board to appeal to. So he's stuck.
It's an instance where you probably have to go to court to try to get a writ of mandamus to force, if I can use that term, the city of East Point to set up this review board, since its own ordinances require that it has such a board.
But now that is what I have been saying, and that is why you represented me on 2 citations that we won last December for protesting for non-implementation of this stormwater utilities. Now, residents can't go to court. We are a working class city, and it should not be the sole responsibility of a resident to try to make sure that in order to get justice, having the law filled here by my elected officials, I have to go to court. I have to pay a lawyer. I have to get the information together and go to court. By the time you do all of that, you may have already spent enough money to fix the problem. That is not the problem.
I agree with you, but I will say, Ms. Pittman, that sometimes when you apply for a writ of mandamus and you are successful, the court has it within its power to order that the city or the offending governmental entity pay your attorney fees. That's one of the sanctions that can be meted out against the city.
Well, that is what we will be asking, because this is going to be, we have more than just this case there. He is not filed because I'm still hoping that they will go on and fix it with all this rain and all going that, and they will not keep talking to him if they have an anti-item a discussion with that. And he said, I'm getting filing for legal recourse. I am, along with other residents in the city, we are filing for legal recourse against those elected officials who are not following our laws and our policies. And another one is making creating legislation. Our charter provides the 2 means by which the council can pass legislation on ordinances. One for non-assessing ordinances and one for assessing ordinances. Because a city is allowed to can charge permit fees, taxes, and what have you. But that can only be done according to our charter at 2 announced regular council meetings with public hearings for the public before it can be passed. Lo and behold, I learned 2 weeks ago that the city, no, it wasn't 2 weeks ago, it was last week. I received a mail out and the utility bill my husband did. And there's a letter saying that the city of East Point has a program by which they're going to help you if you have water leakage on your property up to $2,500. Now the city proposes a $1.60 per month fee that you can opt out of by notifying the city. This has been illegally done. There is no ordinance creating this, whatever it is that they want to do. And bad judgment, why would the city engage an outside entity that is going to pay up to $2,500 once every 12 months? You can file for it if there's a need to pay for the water leakage that came about because of a break in the water line or plumbing inside the house. That should be between the homeowners and that company. We already have a project that I brought to the city of East Point when I was mayor that came from the National League of Cities, whereby any water or sewer lines that runs from the street to your house, you are responsible for, not the city. If there is a breakage or they need to be repaired, this company will come out and do it. The only thing that the city of East Point was asked, we stated that we would do, was to provide the data address basis so they could send this letter out, letting the people know that this is a legitimate agreement with the city only to offer you this, which is going to be between the homeowner and then them. That if this happens on your property, they will come out completely replace, if need be, the water line and sewer line. The city has nothing to do with it. So why is the city acting as the administrative arm for a private business, collecting money on a utility bill, and then with no information as to how many residential homes will have to pay this $1.60? How much would that be? How much funds will that generate? And how much are we going to pay this company? Because they're not just going to sit there and not have the money. They got to have money coming from someplace. There's no transparency. There's no proposal that's credible. But yet and still, you're going to send out a letter saying that the residents would pay $1.60 a month. Apartment complexes who do not have water meters are going to pay a flat $9 a month. You can have 300 apartments and they're paying $9 a month for any water leakage within the complex. Then you have your retail businesses with one and your strip malls for another. There is no ordinance, no contract that has been given to the council members that through open records, residents could obtain to see what it is that you're charging us for now. And who in their right mind in the city of East Point would go and engage with a contract where fees are paid when they are treated this 80-year-old veteran so cruelly about his property? Now, with this writ of mandamus, residents need to understand. We need to know if anything comes out during the filing and the trial, that specifically points to a council member whose conduct could be stated criminally because he violated this. How would the judge, how would, what kind of standing would that incur? All right, so okay, let's take this for instance. Spending money on your
Yes.
credit card. You get your credit
Yes.
card, you go out there and spend what you're not supposed to. Well, in our writ, we're saying violation of the rules for the spending of money on the credit card, going to grocery stores, going to we have some to go to restaurants and the service station. Those are not allowable expenses in the city of East Point on a credit card. I don't think that's allowable anywhere in the state of Georgia, but it happens. But our council members up there are so compromised that they all are doing something that they can't hold either just one person accountable and say, you did that without them turning around and pointing the finger and say, well, you did this and you did that. We don't have enough we don't have enough council members to form a forum that can call these others members to answer for what they're doing. So would that
Think
qualify?
I think ordinary members of the city, ordinary residents, maybe have to step up to go to court to get a writ of mandamus to make sure the city council members operate according to their own ordinances.
And that
You know,
includes federal, state constitution, our charter, all of our
absolutely,
ordinance, resolutions, and policies and practices. Everything,
absolutely.
and there is no one that's above any of those.
No, they are supposed to be following their own rules and regulations, their own ordinances.
So,
And of course, ultimately, the statutes of the state of Georgia and the United States.
well, they're not following the most basic ones here, and maybe we need to go to the state legislature and ask them to come up in the attorney general's office, have some discussion about some more oversight of local governments than they have that they are willing to do now, because there are so many criminal activities that comes up where money is the culprit. Under
Yes,
the table, conflicts of interest, local ethics boards can't do anything with it because that ultimately, whatever decision made by the ethics board goes back to that council for adjudication, for them to say what yay or nay we're going to do. So unless you go to court and charge them and all, and there should be something in between there at the state level that you can go to the attorney general and ask to investigate, because they stormrolled us. Open records, we don't have them. Well, my name is known in the attorney general's office. I'll ask you twice, and I'll always write second notice, and then they ask 5 more days. Here you are, don't have the information yet yet you done A, B, C, D. And when I ask about the documentation that led up to your doing that, you don't have that information. And another thing I want to, I'm not going to ask you for legal representation here on the podcast, but I do want to ask you this question here.
yes,
When it comes to the finances of the city manager and the finance director are the ones who determine what checks are paid, what invoices are paid.
yes,
Now, that authorization comes in the form of your budget having been passed. The city manager and department heads have listed individual items in this budget for allocations. Well, our
yes,
charter is very clear. The only allocations from the budget that have to come back, that can be paid without coming back to the council, are multi-year contracts because they've already been voted on and they go from 1 year to their pay. Bond debt, you got to pay your bond debt, and you have what we call a purchasing amount of $12,500. That any expenditure over that has to go before the council. But first, the purchasing agent needs to state the invoices and all. Those have followed a process. You can't have $200,000, $150,000, or even $20,000 of taxpayers' money being spent without somebody knowing whether or not this was the best price. We have bids. If it was not a sole service provider, then where are the bids? And you go top three, where are they? When you ask for open records,
Accountability, and that sometimes can be an issue.
well, see, now that's what I'm talking about. They say, well, we don't have that. So there you sitting, you can't go any farther. You don't know, well, we need 10 more days. If the job has been given to the person, they had to bid. They had to go through this process. So if they did not go through that bidding process, then any competitor can bring charges against the city for violating their own bidding process. But then that would not be a writ because he I'm sure would want to have financial compensation for them not doing that. But we okay. You want to speak?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, because see, I'll start talking and I'll get carried away.
No. I like to hear you talk about what is going on in the city, because when you speak about what is going on in the city, then I can give you my legal opinion as to what I think the citizens ought to do.
All right, now we have in our ordinance that no elected or appointed official of the city can have access to city properties and resources that are denied to the residents based on expediency. That is, if they go and use a room, if we have a public building and a council member decide they want to go in and use that room and not have to pay, and if I, as a resident, want to use that room, I have to pay because the city provides elected officials with a council ward expense account to communicate with their constituents. Yes. So if I have to go in there and spend $20 an hour for 3 hours, and an individual council member wants to go in there and do the same, we should both be treated the same. He can't say or she can't say, well, I'm a council member and I want this room. Now,
I agree.
The council and that is in our charter. Now, we have a big problem here with the use of our city council chambers. The city council chambers where we have our council meetings, but some council members will go in there and use it, and it's not a council a meeting. It's not for rent, and residents are not allowed to use it, even if they try to rent. I can't rent the use of city hall chambers, but any council member, less than a quorum, a group of them, can go in there and do what they want. They can allow any group from outside the city to come in and have entertainment or whatever. But still, I cannot get that chamber, and I'm a resident. I have never
sound fair to me.
I mean, that is a clear violation of one of our sections in our charter. And then two, residents have a hard time understanding, well, how do you go about determining when something is legal or not legal? Our charter allows our elected official to come up with laws, rules, and regulations in order to maintain our government that changes over time. But it has to have a foundation in our charter. And there is nothing in our charter that says elected officials, once you elected, you get your own personal budget of taxpayers' money in any amount you want to spend on whatever activity you want. That's a violation of state law. You cannot sit up and say, well, I think I want to sponsor um, this most popular one, Win Down Wednesday. The only problem with that, there is not a single council member in the city of East Point who has been voted on or authorized to chair that. Council members, like the mayor, do not have administrative authority. You cannot set up as a council member and say, well, I'm going to work on this out of my office. The mayor can't work on things out of her office where taxpayer monies are used to pay for staff, materials, supplies, or whatever, outside of those that comes under her duty as mayor.
Right.
Council members can't come up and say, well, I'm going to have a senior citizen ball. And I'm going to pay for the hotel out of taxpayers' money. I'm going to invite seniors. 99% of the seniors in the state of East Point have no idea about it. And it's going to be at a hotel. The food is free and all. And this is going to be my yearly event. That's not a legal expenditure anywhere in the state of Georgia. You do not have, number one, there is not a law on the books that says council members will have X number of dollars for expenditures as they want. That's not even, we don't even have that on the books. How is it then that one council member can be expected to have an event that costs $10,000, another one $80,000, another one $200 and some thousand?
Oh,
we
that's
have.
a lot of money.
I mean, this is why we need this writ of mandamus. We can't stop them. They act as if they don't know that they can't do this, and they have a full the authority, the authorization to hire a full-time city attorney and a deputy city attorney. So why are we sitting here at East Point with a hourly rate attorney? Whenever something comes up in this city during the day and a legal opinion needs to be given, East Point is big enough, large enough, and has enough resources for us to have those two experienced, well-trained attorneys to look up and go through our charter, ordinance, or policy to see what is this make on this. When a department head wants to do something and the city manager is not there, even if he is there, that department head can go to the attorney and say, look, this is a contract here. They want to put this in there. How do we stand on this? What can we do?
No, absolutely. And that's the whole purpose of having a city attorney, to vet everything you do before it is implemented.
Well, that's not the case. They will take a vote on something that that requires an ordinance. They're already, the item I told you about the wanting to work with this company, it says if somebody said, oh, let me see now, I need some cash. And I know this group over there that I can talk to and say, look, if we get you enough people signed up, the money's gonna come from the residents, and we're gonna get the money to you. But this problem is not going to be such that it's going to be a great monthly expenditure, and there will always be money there to cover it if need be. You don't have water breaks every day, not in your home. The houses on my street that was built over 52 years ago, All of us have had to replace water and sewer lines, but we did it within the same 3 years because that's what happened. Everything that they wore out. Unless you have a plumbing problem in your house, then are you going to use, unless it's a frozen pipe or pipe that bursts, you're not going to have a water bill for that event alone of $2,500. And that's as high as you can go. They're going to tell you, well, you got to pay $1.60 a month unless you opt out. Why is it up to me to opt out of something that I did not opt in? No. And where is this ordinance for this assessing fee that you're charging me?
Yeah,
And
where
how
does
much?
your budget come from to do this?
No transparency. We deserve transparency. We need to know, okay, how much money comes in from this scheme that you have here? Over the last 3 years, how many water leaks were there in the city? What did they come to? There has to be some kind of mechanism in place to let you know how much money coming in and how much money is going over here to this business and how much each point is trying to make off us again. We already have a SPLOS in place, 2 SPLOSes in place. Here we are living in a city, more head of household home families than we have married couples. So you know what our income is going to be. But yet instead, you want to come up and put another fee out there, put in a utility bill that they will look at and probably throw that to the side without having the 2 public hearings you're supposed to have. That is my problem. All the council members up there know this, yet not a one of them has said anything about, well, we can't do this until there's a public hearing on it. They're talking about how you're going to get the information to the residents. That's why we want our writ of mandamus to go for the mayor and council instead of this individual, that individual, because number one, they don't hold anybody accountable.
But it sounds to me, Ms. Pittman, based on what you're saying, that even though they may have in-house city attorneys, they're not consulting with these attorneys to get advice, or they're just simply ignoring the advice given to them by their attorneys. It's either one or the other.
Well, with this council here, it's not only with the attorney, it's the city manager too. You cannot hire a person, then tie their hands by telling them how to do their job, which is not your duty and responsibility. Now, you tell the city manager how to do his job by looking at those job duties and responsibilities that's listed there. You supervise him on whether those are being accomplished. But if you go in there and say, now look, this is how we do business. You cause problems. And this person is working. He or she needs their job. So you compromise your own employees into giving no advice, no opinion, or even though not any knowledge of what you're doing until they get to the council meeting and see it on the agenda. The agenda should have already gone to the city attorney.
Several for the meeting.
Yes. So, and then with the addendum information supported what is on there. And we have more items on the consent agenda than we have on the regular agenda that's going to be up for debate before the council. I mean, you shouldn't have contracts, $200-some thousand contracts on a consent agenda. This is not a multi-year contract. This is not a bonded payment. This is one that has come up, and you talked about it in work session, and you agreed before a work session where, well, this is good, so we're going to put it on consent agenda. On one that was on the consent agenda, our Parks and Recreation Department over at Jefferson Park Recreation Center, we have this organization over there that charges families with children for STEM.
Okay.
I don't know whether or not they're paying rent, but over there, but they're charging the parents. And where in East Point, and I have asked, well, are they paying rent? You can't come and say you're a nonprofit and the children are going to pay. This is a regular program after school the whole year. And you're using city resources to make money. They sat up there and had in the agreement that they could not be questioned about a grant that the city gave to them, supposedly to enhance their program. Now, this happened when Attorney Weems was there.
Right.
And that statement was in a contract that council had on consent agenda.
That was actually in the contract that they could not question.
You cannot put in any contract that you have the right to withhold any information. That's not a
Yes, because the essence of governmental contracts should be transparency. These are should be at any rate subject to open records and so on. People are entitled to see what their government is doing out in the open.
Mm-hmm. But this is on the consent agenda, and they're always more on the consent agenda than on the regular agenda. And when you have to read page after page, and well, I'll take the time to do that because I'm suspicious of it in the first place. And so when I saw that in there, I said, there is no contract in the United States of America that says that's not
that you can withhold information.
Yes, the federal governments, when they have talking about other governments and the neck arms and what have you, well, it's sacrifice. I mean, not special privilege information.
Sensitive information, sensitive to national security or something like that.
Okay. And that surely was not that. And things like that matters because residents need to understand every cent that is not spent on community assistance programs and spent elsewhere on something that has no viable impact on the community, you're losing. You're losing.
You're right.
We have hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars right now in that budget that's earmarked for special events by council members for their personal budget. You don't have a personal budget. You elected officials have all the things that the federal and state government said that you could put there. Benefits. If they're as part-time employees, they have health insurance and things like that. Those are stated by the state when it comes to a writ as to what can be there. But then the only requirement to be an elected official in East Point is age and residency. It does not say you have to have any kind of special educational background or whatever.
What about good character?
But it should have good character. But since we have a convicted president, I don't even know about that anymore. But it should, but there's no moral clause or anything like that. You just have to be over 18 and been a resident in the city for a year and however long in the ward you represent. It does not say you have to have a high school diploma, a college degree. You have to have a major in this. You have to be an expert in that. It does not say that. That is why you are allowed to be at the behest of the city.
Yes.
Travel and training to help you. Our charter allows for that. But that's it. We are not responsible for sending you on trips out of the country. Why are you out there in the first place? What are you going to bring back here to East Point to do what with? You're not an ambassador. We're not Atlanta. So let's not try to act like you can play with the big boys in Atlanta and at Atlanta Fulton County commissioners. You going out of trips and all with them, Africa.
Yeah,
Then
but those people have got to be accountable too. There have been a lot of things on the news recently about public officials misusing government funds for their own private travel or their own private entertainment or just some other improper purpose.
when they're in the city of South Fulton, that city council came through and held their the mayor accountable and responsible.
Absolutely, I saw that.
But
And
we're
there,
not
there
doing that
have
here
been
in
other
East Point.
places too.
We're not doing that in East Point. And just day before yesterday, one resident in the city of South Fulton is in court about open records. Could not get the information. The judge had told them that, and for some reason they still haven't got it. And when that happens, it doesn't exist. And if it does exist, it's too incriminating to see the light of day. Either the attorney general, but she said the news media said the judge. But when you have a council that does not police itself, and you don't have enough members for a quorum up there to do that, and the others up there who would do that, that's less than a quorum, don't because they fear the council members up there and what they will or will not do. It is a poor council that, and it is against the law too, to have a meeting outside the council chambers. So if you go and have your meeting outside the council chambers to do your vote count and all, rather than talk and discuss and debate the issues, then you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And if you fail to bring motions to the floor that could stop this, we have enough laws in place in our ethics policy that would deter and put an end to a lot of the behaviors that are being exhibited here by our elected officials here at East Point. But since that seems to be a problem with them, new council members come on board. Next thing you know, they're doing what the other ones did.
Yes. Well, let's not elections because maybe the right people aren't running for office.
Well, now that you took words out of my mouth. This year, we will be in November electing a new mayor and 4 other council members. Residents need to make sure they know something about the people who are asking them to vote them to sit up there and spend their monies, the taxpayers' money, and provide services for this city and programs for this city that moves this city forward. Too often, people vote based on a cardboard sign. They vote on, so my friend said she voted for this, and so I am. What does your friend know about this council member, this person that's running for council? Have you ever seen them out and about in the community? Have you ever heard them at a council meeting advocating for something? If you're running and a candidate for office, you ought to be running because either the person up there is not doing what you feel like they ought to be doing, and you're able to state that. And that you can not only do it better, but you can go forward and bring in new ideas. That's not what is happening. That's not what is happening at all. In the city of East Point, we are still waiting for a budget committee report. As of January, when the budget committee was appointed, 3 council members and a resident, and the mayor is supposed to appoint the chairperson. That is an amendment to the ordinance that we had when I was on the council. the mayor did not appoint the chairperson. The people on the committee would appoint the chairperson. Be that as it may, the budget was presented and adopted without a single budget committee in the city of East Point. Residents had no opportunity to go and sit at a budget committee and hear them go through the budget to see whether or not there would be recommendations that they would make to the council on whether or not to have this in the budget at this amount. I had not had. I have something else in the budget.
But I think those are the kinds of things you have to be working on going forward, Ms. Pittman, to change. And I am glad that you are going to have hopefully be having some new people in place who are going to, if necessary, use the writ of mandamus to force the city council and the mayor to do their job.
Well, I really appreciate your coming with us today because it is important that residents know that there are people in our community who do volunteer and give of their time that's knowledgeable when it is for a just cause. And being an attorney, dealing with me for over the past 10 years, well, it was longer than that because I've been out of office 10 years, 15 years, I know where your heart lies. You are a dedicated, virtuous attorney. You are not going to give us any. Well, the truth is the truth. You are not going to say something just because you can. You are under the jurisdiction of the court. You are a good steward of the court. And the residents of East Point, those of you who have listened, whether you're in East Point, College Park, Hapeville, Snellville, Paramount, it does not matter because this writ of mandamus goes for any municipalities and elections officials in the state of Georgia.
That is correct, Ms. Pittman.
All right. And if you find that you have exhausted all means of trying to correct the behavior of the members of your on the council where you live, then you need to seek out a writ of mandamus with an attorney. And that is what we're going to be doing. And I am so thankful for WCEG for allowing us this time and you giving your time in order to help educate the residents of East Point and those throughout the state. Now, could you tell us how to get in touch with you if we have a problem?
Oh, absolutely. I am available by telephone. My telephone number is 404-457-2195. I also have an email address and I do respond to my emails. It's my name, Maureen McLeod. Maureen McLeod, ESQ@gmail.com. So it's just my name, the letters ESQ@gmail.com.
Well, East Point residents, you have heard from the best, the two best. Attorney McLeod, the knowledgeable attorney, Queen Earnestine D. Pittman, former mayor of East Point, the community activist who will fight until I take my last breath. Because there are too many who have already done so, fighting so we could be in the position we're in today. And we need to stand up for ourselves.
And I just want to say, Ms. Pittman, to the residents of East Point, that it was an absolute pleasure for me to be here and to talk about something that I think would be of interest to them. And, you know, they're always welcome to reach out to me if they have any kind of legal issue which they think I might be able to help them with. I am just so happy to have gotten the opportunity to appear on this podcast.
All right, and thank you so much for being with us. Now our time is up. Hope to see you on and let us hear from you on Facebook, Twitter, and any other live media that you are in tune to. Thank you and goodbye.